Andy Johnson. We're looking at a simple summer online tutoring project. Sally's summer online tutoring project, and I'm using two products, Fluency Plus and Reading A to Z, and you'll see how these fit in here in just a minute. But Sally, not her real name, is going into third grade. Reading level. All reading levels are guesstimate because it depends on what is being read, students' background knowledge, sentence structure, etc., etc. And they're essentially just little snapshots. But after listening to her read some graded passages, I would guesstimate she's high first grade, maybe early second grade. All right. I listened to her read. Listening is the best diagnostic, along with miscue analysis or an informal reading inventory. Standardized tests are blunt instruments, and they don't get to what the cause of the reading problem is. By the way, good reading teachers know what's wrong. They use these measures simply to quantify for the measure monkeys what they already know to be true. So they put numbers to what they already know to be true. Now, I resisted the urge to quantify her, to give a pre and post reading measure of some sort, to be a measure monkey, because I didn't want her to have another guy coming towards her and giving her a test of some sort. I just didn't want to do that. It didn't serve any purpose. I was here to help Sally on this summer online tutoring project. So I did not do that. I did not want to quantify. And some people say, well, how do you know if learning has occurred? Well, I always put that around to the questioner. How do you know if teaching has occurred? You attend to the teaching and learning will occur. So for this summer tutoring project, we met twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, online. So I told her mother, we're going to meet 4 weeks, then we'll check in and see how it's going. And these were 15 to 20-minute sessions. They don't have to be long. However, they usually kind of dribbled into 30. As a good teacher, I was always looking, feeling, listening to my student. I didn't want her to become frustrated. Rule number 1, never ever frustrate your students. Rule number 2, help children fall in love with books. Exposure to print is essential. I wanted her to be exposed to print during our 15 to 20, but then we would set goals outside of our sessions. So my session was just a small part, a small part. Setting goals was important, but for this one, we focused on fluency and comprehension. That was the purpose of this one, and I'll show you how we do that. But I did dribble a little into word identification. We started every session. We would check in with Sally's goals. Tell me, did you meet your goals? And she would say, yep, I read 5 books. And then we would set goals for the next time. When Sally said she read 5 books, then I'd say, oh, tell me about your favorite book. And she would tell me about her favorite book. Simple as that. Keep her reading between sessions. Then we would begin with a language experience approach activity or a language experience activity where I'd simply say, tell me, what did you do yesterday? What do you want to write about? And she would write and she would tell me and I would write down on this Word document using 24-point font, that is 1.5 space, so it's easy to see. So I'm printing her words, her ideas, her experiences. This is an example, all right? After she wrote that, we would then practice fluency, where she would read it once, maybe twice, until fluency is achieved. Now she's using words and concepts and that are within her experience that she knows about. That makes it easier. We would then do analytic phonics. That would make it a game. There's a word here that begins with the pl, pl sound. There's a word here that ends with the l, l sound. And it all gives me a sense of that student, what they have difficulty and what they do not, what that student does not have difficulty with. Then I would usually ask the student, okay, your turn, tell me a riddle. And she would find a word and say, well, there's a word here that has the sound, and I would find it. This gives the teacher a chance to make important personal connections with the student. Teaching starts with a relationship. As I said, the focus on this was fluency and comprehension, but we started doing some simple word identification activities. After listening to her read, I noticed that when she struggled with a word, she would try to just sound it out, and that gave her some problems. So then we started doing closed sentences based on her language experience, and I'll show you what that is. We called it a guess the word game. We're going to play guess the word game. My N is Cora, and I would teach her to look on both sides of the mystery word to see if she could guess what it was. And these are abundantly obvious. That's what close should be, because we want to focus on not using letters, but context to identify a word or to recognize a word as the child is reading. All right, simple close. This would take maybe 2 minutes at the very most. And then we would get to the short passage fluency part. Now, we used some really silly stories from Fluency Plus at Readosity.com. I'm not doing a commercial, but that's what I use there. Really silly stories, as you'll see. They're about 30 to 40 words, these passages. They have a lot of repetition, a lot of dialogue, repeating characters, etc. And these are stories 7 to 10 or 13 individual stories or days in a single story. The student reads the story through 3 times and then record the time each time, record the duration for each attempt, all right? And some struggling readers, I read it through first. And they would stop either at the 30 or the 40 word passage. Now this develops self-efficacy. Here's a sense of it. Boppers chews gum. What is it, Bopper? Molly asked. What's the problem? I was chewing gum, said Bopper. Oh, said Molly. Dialogue is more natural. It's what the child hears around him or her. That's why these have a lot of dialogue, repeated characters, repeated words, and they choose to stop either at the 30 word or the 40 word passage. And then we record her times. First attempt, second, and she can see her times getting better. When I do this in person, I wanted to keep it simple this summer. I usually record the times on a line graph so they can see their time. And I usually have students do that. I want students to be actively engaged. Then we read 2 reading A to Z books. Now I like these for an online tutoring environment because they're quick and they're easy and you can adjust the levels easily. So that is why I like using reading A to Z books. They work perfectly for this online environment, this online tutoring. Now, the focus is on comprehension, so we use a simple comprehension strategy, story grammar. We want to develop the cognitive processes so students naturally begin to look for and identify story grammar. I use this as a sort of story preview. Before reading, I say, we're going to read Beanie and the Missing Bear. Here are the characters, and I go through them. This takes place in her house. These are the events. Claire can't find her teddy bear. She looks all over for it. We are going to read to find out if Beanie, the detective, can find Claire's missing teddy bear. All right, that sets the purpose. So students are reading with purposeful intent. And this first story, I want to be at their independent level. That means they can identify 98% of the words or more. I want it to be easy. They are exposed to print. All right, that is important. And when the child reads, I do not jump in and correct. Matter of fact, I stay away if it's at the independent level. I want them to develop metacognition. If they're stopping, struggling, that means you need to go down a level. So this should be at the independent level. Now, the second book can be at the instructional level. That means they're able to read with your help. I provide a scaffolded oral reading similar to the neurological impress method, where I'm reading silently just a little ahead and the child keeps up with my pace. So I'm reading 2 books, first one independent, second one instructional. That's it. Seems to be working. It should be fun. Never, ever frustrate students.